I am Quincy Collins, Assistant Director of LaSalle University's Solstice MFA Creative Writing Program. Welcome again to our Winter 2023 Evening Reading Series for our final reading of the series for today's edition featuring our alum and grad assistant, Ellen Austin Lee, and our faculty member, Amy Hoffman. As we open this physical and virtual space, I would like to acknowledge that the territory on which LaSalle University stands is that of the Pawtucket and the Massachusetts people. LaSalle's campus is a place to honor and respect the history of the Native and Indigenous communities who continue to reside in the area currently known as Massachusetts, and the continued efforts of their community leaders to ensure that history is not oversimplified or lost. This statement is one small step in acknowledging the difficult history that brought us to reside on this land and to help us seek understanding of our place within that history. Ownership of land itself is a colonial concept, and we acknowledge that the ideal restorative measure is to return land to Native and Indigenous communities. The Solstice MFA program at LaSalle University seeks ways to be part of a better future going forward. As we grow, we pledge to seek out Native writers for our faculty and guest faculty. And meanwhile, we have established the Diffuse Fellowship for Native and Indigenous writers, which will be granted to the incoming Solstice student annually. We hope to inspire others to take action as well. One way you might do so is to consider a gift to the Native Land Conservancy, which is based in the area currently known as Mashpee, Massachusetts. For more information, go to nativelandconservancy.org. First up, we will have Ellen Austin Lee, who will be introduced by a handsome, devilish assistant director named Quincy Collins. And then we'll conclude with Amy Hoffman, who will be introduced by our alum, Cindy Zellman. So Quincy, come to the stage. Hi, this is my first time here tonight. My name is Quincy Collins. I'm the Assistant Director of the Solstice MFA program of LaSalle University. Kind of mad at Ellen for stealing my thunder on the story that I'm opening with, but we're gonna go through it again. One of my earliest memories of Ellen Austin Lee as part of the Solstice community involves an evening at our previous home, High Manor College, sometime after the night's reading ended. As I took a solitary stroll back to the dorms, Ellen walked up the road, also on a solitary stroll. For a few minutes, Ellen told me not only how apologetic she was for missing a mandatory reading, but also how much she appreciated everyone at Solstice and how it was everything she dreamed, to which I replied how happy I was that she chose us and that she should ensure, if nothing else, she doesn't miss workshop in the morning. 3 years later, Ellen still chooses us, and I'm thrilled that we chose her as one of our grad assistants for our winter residency, our second on-campus one since moving to LaSalle. A winter 2022 graduate of the Solstice MFA program, so only a year ago, I have come to know Ellen as a talented and celebrated writer. Prior to starting her graduate degree studies, she had already published in places like Mask and Spectacle, The Main Review, and the Greenbrier Review. Additionally, she had published her first chapbook, Firefly, with Finishing Line Press in 2019. In the time since, Ellen has gone on to rack up seemingly an unending list of publication credits, now including the Lily Poetry Review, Pine Mountain Sand and Gravel, and Anti-Heroin Chic. I mean, like literally every week, Ellen has something new to talk about. It's amazing. Moreover, her second chapbook, Lockdown, Scenes from Early in the Pandemic, also from Finishing Line Press, was published in 2021. In addition to her own achievements, Ellen champions the work of others in the Poetry Night at Sitwell's reading series, which she co-hosts. As a Solstice student and as a friend, she is generous with praise. Given her kindness and care, it's no surprise she was a pediatric critical care nurse for 18 years. What I enjoy most about Ellen's poetry is that she trusts readers enough to communicate sentiments directly, to avoid obfuscating the heart of a thing with too much figurative imagery. In Lockdown, she tackled a subject that, while it is still raw, many of us have not yet grappled with what the pandemic has meant for us and will mean for us. In Postcards from the Pandemic, Ellen leverages the line to leave readers with an image, one that speaks to an aspect of the pandemic that will haunt many of us for years, despite how mundane it can feel out of context. She writes, "We don't know if he has the virus, but my husband is a doctor and we need them, especially now. I want us all to live. So I put my son's dinner outside his bedroom door." The separation of such a dire task, wanting to safeguard loved ones from a deadly virus, and the final domestic image emphasizes the weight of the juxtaposition, all while using literal language. In this way, through craft and in this poem and many others, Ellen renders our uncanny reality. Please join me in welcoming Ellen Austin Lee.
If that'll work, right? Yeah. Thank you for that beautiful introduction. Man, now that story has been heard and then reinforced, so it's never going to be forgotten. So only I would stop making mistakes. But anyway, so I'm Ellen Austin Lee, and I'm a 2022 graduate of Solstice. Got my MFA in poetry. So I'm just almost exactly what we got. So to choose poems for tonight, I decided to use the parameter of reading poems that I've written post-solstice and published. So for the lion's share of these poems are new in this past year. So this first poem I wrote within a week of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And it's called Found Poem of War because I used a lot of imagery from Yeats's poem, The Second Coming. You'll hear some words here and there from that. But the main inspiration was a newspaper photograph I saw of nurses had evacuated infants from a hospital that had been on ventilators, and they were keeping them alive in the bomb shelter with what we call bamboo bags. So you'll hear the word bamboo in the poem, and that's what that means. And I'm showing you what it means. So it's called Found Poem of War. A line from Yeats's poem reverberates. Like a bass chord becomes the strum, combines with an image of babies kept alive in a bomb shelter underground. Each breath bagged by bamboo into tiny lungs. This hung an undercurrent, under my thumb. This rough beast lumbering a ton, 100 years running, but truly thousands before. More's the sum of history in a new poem, not new, but old. What crumbling humans, such endless war. My hands weary as if I'm delivering each breath. I know what this means. We cannot take a rest for the children expire. I tire, but the poem is found. The cannon, the fodder, explosions of sound. That poem still upsets me. So this next poem is about a war up in America. It's called The Rainstorm. My brother and I watched The Price is Right in the playroom, an uneasy truce between us. The TV table he threw at me 2 years before, resting in its metal cradle. I teased him so often, he lost control. The windows open, the air waited with coming rain. The bushes green, so green, upstate New York emerald. The rumble and flap of thunder sounds a starting gun. We see silver sheets release and look at one another. Let's go, we say. We shed our shoes and run out the screen door into the waterfall. The pounding so loud, We have to shout to hear our voices. Laugh and barefoot splash around the block. The lawn's giant green sponges squishing under toes. Shorts and t-shirts plastered like second skins. The storm is medicine that heals us. The gutters are rapids, rivers we crash through. Back home, I grabbed a green towel and handed to him. Remember how Mom used to be afraid to leave us alone together, I asked. We grinned the storm that passed between us. So this next poem is a duplex. So most all the poets in the room know that this is a form invented by Jericho Brown. So it's called Ripples. I'm talking about ripples here, how the river moves even as we stand still. The story doesn't make sense when I try to shape it. The harder chapters don't flow. Their shape, the sense of the story, changes for the telling. In the latest chapter, I speak of a poem unseen by my first husband, where I say, I loved you in Hebrew letters. Say these letters mean I'm sorry in a language only he can decipher. And years later, after the poem's written, I learned his liver's laced with cancer. Say he won't live, and I've written him amends before it's too late. These layers lace. The river spills from the source to the mouth, then opens to the ocean. Once the winding river poured words into a book for my aged father. The source, some spirit, opened his hands to this gift mere months before his mind unraveled. At an earlier time, the gift, when a former lover found Firefly, the tale of my unraveling, mere months in print. This drunk's regret, the wreck when it broke it. The river bends, there the water's peaceful. The drunk wreckage did not break me. From what was written, I was forgiven. Peace, I'm talking about ripples here. The river moves even when we think we're at a standstill. Feel free to make me look for the voice. Okay, thank you. So this next poem has a really long title, so I'll read the title. It's called Conversation with Dr. Javago's Lara in the backseat of an Uber on the way home from my therapy appointment, where my therapist told me an attachment disorder affects my marriage. So conversation with Dr. Javago's Lara in the backseat of an Uber on the way home from my therapy appointment, where my therapist told me an attachment disorder affects my marriage. Lara leans in and whispers, true love's not carriages and cozy cottages. Snow comes with cold. At first, the silver landscape's magical, then you must wrap yourself in furs. Romance starts like a revolution, but in the end, it's war. The train leaves smoke trails and you see your breath comes in clouds, alone. Dear Lara, let me tell you, I've lived in your Russia, waiting for the good doctor to appear, a nest with one man under the comforter, no comfort if no twin soul is there. I want to say fiction's not your friend. Listen, your perfect match dies of a heart attack. The lesson is to stop looking for lovers out every streetcar window. But here I ask Usmani, my Uber driver, how he got to Ohio from Senegal. He shows me a photo of his wife of 30 years. She's Katie, he says. She makes me crazy, but that's the thing. She wants, he shrugs, we're here. He taps his phone emphatically. I lean in and hear myself say, you stayed that many years, she's family. At ride's end, I open the door, look up at my home. There's a little file. So this next one is a very short golden shovel. So Terrence Hayes invented this form, and he's here every other year as a writer in residence. So I'm glad he's not here to hear what I've done with this golden shovel. I'm just joking. It was an experiment here. But. So this is called "In Which Little Red Riding Hood Learns a Lesson." And the stanza I used to create the end words for the lines is this, the probably most famous stanza from Ariel, Sylvia Plath's. Out of the ash I rise with my red hair, and I eat men like air. You must find a way out. This forest is thick with the fangs of sharp animals, the claws, the fur, and lips like ash. Dread eyes flame yellow. I climb the rise, buttoned up with my coat, my smallness. Little red, pull the hood over your hair. The woodsman is not coming, and you are big enough. I know the wolf cannot eat you, and saviors are fiction, as most men fall like soot from the air. So I just have a couple more left. So this poem, Deb asked me about last night. So I did write this at Solstice. It didn't make it into my manuscript. It's an American sonnet. And my husband's a beekeeper. So I often write poems about that have bees in them. So you'll hear. So the day my husband stood in the spring sun, I regret that I spent most of our years together, over 25, keeping score on a chalkboard, carefully recording each error he's ever made. He earned the most marks when he raged unfairly against our son, and I tallied with a heavy hand the cold criticisms of my body, callous, cruel. I knew as soon as the page filled, I'd be gone. History shifted the day I saw him knee-deep in the ivy, looking for the queen. He'd abandoned the smoker, used to stun the bees. As they crawled on his bare arms and he lifted both hands, alive with wings, I felt a slow tenderness spread between us. And this poem I wrote for a mindful poetry anthology that is co-sponsored by the On Being Project. So it's a time and a place moment poem. It's called Spring Morning at Bryce Canyon. After the eagle flew past our motel in Flagstaff, after we planned to wake in the dark and drive to Bryce for sunrise over the canyon, after flashlights along the path to the overlook, after we settled on the flat rock to watch, waiting for the sky to break, there was still no lift as we shivered in the frigid black. After another hour passed with no silvering in sight, no birds stirring, silence its own voice, we suspected. After we had timed the trip to arrive at daybreak, we had not figured for daylight savings in the neighboring state. We froze as we focused on the stars now in the foreground. After we let go of our search for the coming morning, the sky's lattice light filled our sight. The chill, dry air magnified each star in the night. Arms laced around each other, we named a few. The Dippers, the Milky Way, Orion that we knew. After we stilled, warmed by our breath, the gray grew, then orange bloomed, flowering between the hoodoos. So I'll leave you with a final, this is a villanelle, and this is kind of about the magical thinking that happened, at least for me, the year after my father and my nephew died within a few months of each other, which this is the anniversary of this time of year. So it's called Three Foxes in as Many Moons, and it is a solstice poem. The first 1 month after my father died, still at the crest of the cemetery hill, auburn shine, plumed tail, open your eyes to the messengers as they surely arrive. This fox, like a vanishing dream, a thrill, the first 1 month after my father died. Near the graves where my father and nephew lie, another fox darted past, gave me a chill. Auburn shine, plumed tail, open your eyes. Our family lost both within weeks, I cried. Why had I not spotted a red fox until the first 1 month after my father died? As I rounded a curve near my home one night, the silhouette in my headlights spill. Auburn shine, plumed tail, open your eyes. Three foxes, I search for your reprise. The notes of your song played in me still. The first 1 month after my father died. Auburn shine, plumed tail, open your eyes.
Hey, I can't stand it. I'm Cindy Zellman, and I graduated from Solstice in the summer of 2010 with an MFA in fiction. And Amy Hoffman was my fourth semester mentor. When Amy was my mentor, she said to me something that went a bit like this: Cindy, you write with a lot of humor, but make sure you don't turn your work into a joke. What you write about is important. I'm not sure anyone before her had said my work was important, and I've never forgotten the essence of that statement, not even 12 years later. Not only was she kind and astute in helping me through my creative thesis, but she had great experience as an author and editor. At the time, and for 14 years, Amy was the editor-in-chief of the Women's Review of Books. I felt very lucky to be working with someone so accomplished. And if that wasn't enough, there were her memoirs. Amy had published 3 impressive memoirs. I don't know if they were all 3 were published when I was there, but I think 1 was on the way and 2 had been published. And her work has been recognized by national literary organizations such as Lambda Literary and the Publishing Triangle. Her memoirs include An Army of Ex-Lovers, Hospital Time, and Lies About My Family. An Army of Ex-Lovers is about the time Amy spent working for the Gay Community News. The publication, Amy writes, was, quote, the center of the universe, the LGBTA. During the late 1970s, this is a memoir of gay liberation, before AIDS, before gay weddings, and before the L word. I am old enough to remember that era and how hard it was for some of us to make a connection in the gay community. Amy played a groundbreaking role in providing us with a link via the gay community. Amy writes about AIDS in her memoir, Hospital Time, as a friend of hers, Mike, is ill and dying from the disease. This is how Amy opens Hospital Time. In intensive care, a clock hangs on the wall opposite the bed, big black numerals. One hand it moves and 7 ticks, minute by fucking minute. This remains one of my all-time favorite openings of a book of any time. Alison Bechdel had this to say about her memoir, Lies About My Family. Hoffman is at her hilarious best. Who would have thought that a memoir about a functional family could be so wrenching and so hysterically funny? Alison Bechdel, right? That's to watch out for. What wonderful company to keep as writer. Amy has also written 2 books of fiction, The Off-Season and Dot and Ralphie. The first is about a lesbian couple who moved to Provincetown while one of them recuperates from breast cancer. But because this is Amy's book, This story will delve into the entire community and culture and be a story that transcends the characters. In September, book writer named her second novel, Dot and Ralphie, is one of 12 exciting books to read about women over 50. It has also been recommended by publications such as the Washington Blade and the Bay Area Reporter. Dot and Ralphie explores how aging lesbians with no children to take care of them will take care of themselves. They live on the third floor of a Boston neighborhood triple-decker with winding stairs and no elevators. One of them has 2 bum knees, and the other is recovering from what essentially was a heart attack. According to the character Ralphie, their winding, curvy staircases and eligible for those chairlifts you see advertised on TV. So what are these 2 Asian lesbians to do? Amy, I love the story about Ralphie. There aren't too many writers I know of who are tackling the plight of aging and childless lesbians or aging and childless anyone, but you are. And as always, what you write is very funny, poignant, and especially important. This is not to mention the beauty of your prose, your breadth and depth of knowledge of gay women, relationships, humanity itself, and your wisdom that shines throughout the book, throughout all your books. You are funny, and what you write matters. You are a trailblazer. Thank you, Amy. Please come up and read for us.
Much indeed. It's kind of scary to talk. And thank you all for being here, and thank you to Meg and Clinton and Alan and Cassie and everyone who makes this wonderful program and this wonderful residency possible. It's really an amazing experience to be here. And unlike Ellen, I'm going to do the opposite. I want to read something old, not new. The poet Walter Borowski was born in 1947 and died of AIDS in 1994 at the age of 47. He and his lover, the writer Michael Bronsky, had been in a committed open relationship almost since the minute they met at the Club Baz in New York in 1975, a moment that they both mythologized. You know what a gay bathhouse is? Yes, okay. I met them in 1978 when I became features editor at the Boston Weekly Gay Community News. Michael was my most prolific writer of books and music reviews, interviews, and essays about LGBTQ culture and issues in our community, which sometimes included stories of his sex escapades. I could not have done my job without his graphical mania, since all our writers, including him, were volunteers and unreliable. I don't know if I should tell you this, but one of the reasons Michael was available to write for us was because he'd somehow managed to get on Social Security disability, claiming that he had agoraphobia and couldn't leave his house to work, which was sort of true, although he did go to certain places like the GCN office and the bars and the Harvard Coop where he shoplifted record albums. Michael is now a professor at Harvard. How things change. Walter wrote reviews of books and records, especially those by divas like Nina Simone and Barbara Streisand and Judy Garland, but he was mainly a poet, published in GCN and other gay publications. He did work a conventional job. He was for years an administrator at the Harvard office of a distinguished scientist, whose name I can't remember. Michael and Walter immediately became my friends and mentors. They often invited me to dinner, and over dinner, we talked and yell and gossip, books and politics and people we knew. Michael and Walter running around the apartment, pulling books from their overcrowded shelves, putting obscure records they insisted I must hear on the turntable, Frenzy the cat stalking over everything. It was a thorough education, more than I'd ever received in college. When Walter got sick, I used to visit them a lot. I'd hang out with both of them, or sometimes just with Walter, to give Michael a short respite from caregiving. Something I didn't write about the chapter from my memoir on hospital time, but I wish I had, was that towards the end, Walter would ask me to lie in bed with him. I did, reluctantly. I regret the reluctance. I felt embarrassed. I wondered what Michael would think when he came home and found me in bed with his boyfriend, and why I, a lesbian, was snuggling in bed with a gay man. I wish I hadn't cared about these stupid things. Walter wanted comfort, warmth, touch, and I gave it, but I wish I had given it more freely. I've been thinking a lot of those days and of Walter, because recently Michael and I revived our friendship with his laughs, and we began having lunch together once a month. And an edition of Walter's collected poems was just published by the Library of Homosexual Congress, a division of Red Satori Press, edited by Michael and Philip Clark. So instead of reading something recent, I thought I'd share with you a chapter about Michael and Walter from my AIDS memoir, Hospital Time, which I hope captures something of them and the beautiful, cluttered, welcoming home they made together, and of their love and their grief. So here's Hospital Time. I haven't been this in years. Walter's birthday. I come home from Bronsky's house with gifts, a home-baked pear tart missing one slice, a book I've been wanting to read, and a form letter Michael's written that I can copy and send to 10 of my friends, urging them to vote for rent control. It's Walter's birthday, the first since he died, in honor of which Bronsky has promised to change the message on the answering machine and get his hair cut. But when I arrive, he has not done either of these things. He says, maybe Monday. Personally, I don't mind the answering machine, but it drives some people nuts. Walter's voice is still on the tape, with one of his beloved divas shrieking in the background. There was a night near the end when I was visiting, and Bronsky decided to bring Walter into the kitchen. To lift him, Bronsky would sit him up in bed, feet on the floor, and stand in front of him. He would bend at the knees and place Walter's hands on his shoulders. Then he would say, okay, here we go, and rise, lifting Walter upright. Arranging Walter so he stood between the two of us, one arm around Bronsky's shoulders and the other around mine, we kind of dragged him over the threshold of his bedroom into the kitchen. The three of us sat together at the table, Bronsky and I yammering away, Walter slumping farther and farther over in his chair. He'd said nothing since I arrived, just glanced up at me from the bed when I came in, with that terrified gaze he'd taken on, his eyes cavernous and dark. At the table, he looked horribly uncomfortable, and I felt it was wrong for Bronsky and I to go on talking around him. A parody of the evenings the three of us had spent together at this table, yelling for hours about books and music and politics, Bronsky and Walter running around the apartment, pulling books down from the shelves to reinforce their points. A record was playing, something gorgeous and sad. What is this? I asked. It's beautiful. I'm not sure, said Bronsky. I just threw it on the turntable. Suddenly, Walter looked up. Leontine Price, he mumbled. Marietta's Lied from Die Totestadt. And he began to hum along, a quavering, almost inaudible vibration. This is what it's left. Always something. Bronsky caught my eye. My boyfriend, he said. He can hardly walk or talk, but he could be a contestant on opera quiz. Bronsky admits it's been 3 years since his last haircut. He and Walter used to go together, and his hair is down to the middle of his back. He pretends it's a secret vow, a gift to the gods, who in all that time have not shown much appreciation. Roberta, my partner, thinks Bronsky's ponytail looks ridiculous, and she is not alone in this opinion. She's also anti-answering machine, but I'm in favor of it. It's so 70s, just like Bronsky himself, when he and Walter met, 1974, New York City, the club asked. Vronsky and I go out to the back porch, although it's October and chilly. The sun is out, and after some time it warms us. Walter used to sit on the back porch in all weathers, smoking. 2 years or so before this, it was August. Roberta and I had been visiting him. He was sitting on the porch wearing a beautiful blue and white striped cotton robe, which he suddenly stripped off, exposing himself. Is this okay? Is this okay? He kept asking, and we said, of course. The sun was hot. We knew him well. He was so demented. Later, the doctors discovered, totally by accident, that his confusion was being caused by a buildup of fluid in his brain. They had hospitalized him for a spinal tap in another attempt to diagnose his problem. And when he woke up, completely lucid, he said to Vronsky, I feel like Chinese food. How about you? Surprised that they developed a successful treatment, the doctors continued to drain the fluid periodically, and Walter improved for a time. He began writing poems again, listening to opera and Nina Simone, reading, keeping a journal. Many months later, after he had stopped reading and writing for good, I sat in the wooden chair next to Walter's bed, reading a manuscript of his poems that Vronsky had compiled. Walter had written the poems, but he could no longer read them. These are your poems, I exclaimed. You are my favorite poet. He looked at me terrified. Before the memorial service, Vronsky gave me Walter's journal and asked me to pick out some passages to read. I was honored by the request and then surprised to find that the journal was almost entirely about smoking and how ashamed Walter felt of it. He wrote that he had no self-control. In the old days, he used to smoke a special brand of cigarettes called Fatimas. They're discontinued now. And even then, he could only buy them in a special shop in Harvard Square, just 1 and 2 in the evening. He kept them in a silver case that he would bring out after dinner, and he lit them with wooden matches from a tiny cardboard box laminated with a picture of a white swan. On the porch, Walter chain smoked Camel Strays. During his good times, you'd find him out there reading or writing or entertaining other visitors. Later, he'd be hunched way over in his chairs and smoking, although he'd usually look up and say hi when he sat down. I sit in Walter's chair and Vronsky sits in the other one, but he immediately says, why don't you sit over here? The sun is stronger, and we switch. Vronsky remarks that last night David came to dinner. David's birthday is exactly the same as Walter's. They were even born in the same year. The birthday is not exactly the same, Vronsky says. Walter was several hours older. The porch is full of plants that are flourishing beautifully despite the chill, and the fact that the plants were something Walter did, while Vronsky affected not to have the interest or skill. But they've been watered, pruned, repotted, fed by someone. I'm eating a slice of freshly baked pear torte. Vronsky's always done the cooking, and drinking tea. Vronsky asked, do you want lemon? And I said, no, just sugar. And before pouring the tea, he took the sugar shaker and held it upside down over my cup, letting the sugar stream into it unmeasured, exactly the way the homeless women used to do when I worked at the homeless shelter. Stop it, that's too much, I said, and he spooned some out. The tea is delicious. I can never get it to taste like this at home. Vronsky tells me his news. He's angry at Chris. He claims to have yelled at Chris on the phone, although I find that hard to believe since I've never known Vronsky to confront anyone openly, no matter what awful things he's been saying behind the person's back. It's unfortunately true that Vronsky's sentences often begin, so-and-so is my best friend, but Chris was supposed to go out with Vronsky this evening, the evening of Walter's birthday, but another friend offered Chris a theater ticket and he left Vronsky a message on the answering machine, not even bothering to reach him in person, saying he had decided to do that instead. Chris spends as much time by himself as he can, said Michael. But I'm not like that. I love living with Walter and having our friends around. I don't know what to say. Vronsky's words become tangled like smoke among the plant leaves. He's no longer living the life he loves, although he used to. He's so lonely. There's no cure. I thought I'd read you a poem by Walter. It's a poem that I've always wanted to read because it's called My Perfect Poetry Reading. And it's not it was Walter. In my head, a famous poet arrives places. Handsome graduate students greet him at the gangplanks, settle him in snazzy hotel rooms. Can you be comfortable, sir? Is there anything more I can do for you? They've always called ahead to ask my mother my favorite food. Lobster and salads, lobster. They crack the shells. They crack the shells they cook themselves. They dip chunks in butter laced with garlic. Is there anything more? Disregarding garlic breaths, they kiss me. They enfold beds to ascertain second sheets were not forgotten. They pull down the shades on borrowed windows, unless I say I love the view. They escort me to the reading. They announce me lovingly, awkwardly, for that's how I love them. All lips and feet and verbal confusion. I do my act for them, my college-educated, working-class, paid-for mouth. I get paid enormously for these displays of ego. And after another dinner, they take me back. I hear you drink cognac. I hear you blow dope. I sip and I sup with them. Intake time, we sit cross-legged on the floor till our joints loosen up. They'll never forget, they say, anally penetrating a living legend. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Let's give one big round of applause for Ellen and Amy.